Call of Duty 4's multiplayer is a timeless masterpiece. It's a game that's just as fun to play today as it was 18 years ago, and that's quite an achievement. But saying that COD 4 is a masterpiece isn't exactly a hot take. The real question then is what makes Call of Duty 4's multiplayer work so well? What exactly does it do differently than many of the Call of Duties that have come and gone after? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I'm going to break down the particular things that Call of Duty 4's multiplayer does so well, the things that make it such a compelling and rewarding experience even years later. First, a couple of small things before we begin. First off, I'm a casual player, which I'm sure will be very apparent from my mediocre gameplay. However, if you're still wondering why my account is such a low level, it's because I switched to Xbox because it's easier to record. Secondly, I'm a science fiction author in addition to doing YouTube, and the very last book in my series launches next week. Pre-orders are a huge deal for Amazon's algorithm, so it'd mean a huge deal to me if you pre-ordered. We're running an ebook pre-order deal for 99 cents, so a single dollar is all it takes. Heck, the entire series is on sale for $1 each, so you can get the whole series for as cheap as a cup of coffee. The link to my books and website is included in my video description. Thanks again for all of your support. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's dive into it. The first thing COD 4 gets right is its power and simplicity. Call of Duty 4 is a simple game, especially in comparison to its successors. There aren't a whole lot of guns to choose from. There are only a couple of attachments for those guns too. The perk system is straightforward, and there is no customizing kill streaks. You get a UAV at 3 kills, an airstrike at 5, and a chopper at 7. That's it. No predator strikes, sentry guns, attack dogs, nukes, or any of the other dozens of kill streaks that have become staples of the COD series. At first, it might seem like this simplicity is a detriment to COD 4. However, it's one of the game's great strengths. Even though there are few choices, there's power within each of them. They are significant. For most guns, you have the choice between 3 or 4 different attachments. For instance, the red dot sight, the ACOG scope, the grenade launcher, and the silencer. The options are limited, but each caters to a very different playstyle. The red dot sight improves your close range accuracy, which enhances a brawler playstyle. The ACOG improves long range accuracy, which is suitable for marksmen or holding down chokes. The grenade launcher provides extra lethality at the cost of a perk 1 slot. Last but not least, the silencer complements a more tactical stealth approach at the sacrifice of damage. The attachments complement different gameplay approaches. In the years since, the number of attachments has piled up, but these playstyles essentially remain the same: brawler, marksman, or flanker. Over the years, it feels like there's been a dilution to these choices by offering more which have less distinction between them. As a consequence, choices can feel less meaningful. Perhaps the best example of this power and simplicity is with COD 4's perks. It's an incredibly straightforward system. There are red, blue, and yellow perks. You can pick one from each category and you're good to go. However, this system still enables a vast amount of choice and variety in the game. The reason why is that the perks in each category are so powerful. Singular perks are game-changing, and they change how you play. Stopping power increases bullet damage by 40%, decreasing the time to kill for most weapons by a shot or 2. Juggernaut is the inverse, allowing you to take more damage. Then there's the UAV jammer, which makes you invisible to UAVs. Since everybody in the game is equipped with a UAV, this perk is crucial for staying under the radar on the map. By the nature of choice, this means you have to make sacrifices when picking perks. You can't have everything you want. Because of how potent the perks are, they have meaningful effects on gameplay. For instance, let's take the UAV jammer. Being concealed by UAVs is a great benefit. However, you're at a significant disadvantage in a straight up gunfight. Any enemies with Juggernaut or stopping power will either take more damage or kill you quicker. This really forces a certain way of play. With UAV jammer equipped, you need to play smart and play stealthily. Without getting a jump on your opponents, you're toast. Perks too have been diluted over the years. A big reason for this is balancing, especially with the introduction of the pick 10 system, which enabled players to mix and match perks and attachments for a total of 10. Perks needed to be lowered to the power level of attachments, otherwise everybody would pick all perks and no attachments. This isn't necessarily bad for subsequent games, but it does lessen the impact of perk choice. The less they impact gameplay, then the less they encourage new ways of playing, and the less they create variety. Why experiment when, at the end of the day, your moment-to-moment gameplay is going to be the same? I also think the simplicity of COD 4's system actually encourages experimentation. For instance, I'll use two counterexamples. I played a little bit of COD Ghosts lately after a long hiatus, and I found myself intimidated by its perk system. Now, I actually like its perk system once you get used to it, but after forgetting how it worked, I was hesitant to play around with it. With so many perks to choose from, there was a level of analysis paralysis that happened. The same goes for attachment systems in the newer games. There are hundreds of attachments, and despite all of this choice, I noticed a trend of players who would just look up the optimal attachments and go with that. Now, don't get me wrong, people will always go after meta builds in games, but I think a good portion of people were also just so overwhelmed that they wanted the choice made for them, if that makes sense. With COD 4, all of the choices are so straightforward and their consequences so plain to see that it's easy to just play around and figure out what works for however you're trying to play. Ironically enough then, this simple design actually leads to more experimentation. For instance, if I'm wanting to play with a shotgun, and I'm consistently getting shot from far away, then maybe I should equip Juggernaut to protect myself at longer distances. Each of the individual choices are simple, but when you combine the weapon, attachment, and perk choices, there is a wide enough variety to keep someone engaged with experimenting for a long time. Now, I want to reiterate something. My comparison to these other gameplay systems doesn't mean I dislike those systems. I actually do like Pick 10, the Ghost systems, and the weapons bench in newer games. However, they are a good point of contrast to highlight the simplicity and elegance of COD 4's design. It's compelling. It's a system that's so easy to pick up and play, even after years away, while at the same time being a system that offers enough complexity and variety to still be interesting years later. The reason why, again, is that each of these choices feel like they matter. There's no dilution of perks, attachments, or tacticals. Each one serves a very specific purpose and it fills a niche. Few but significant choices. Power and simplicity. That is the magic of COD 4's loadout design. This powerful simplicity marries with the map design. There might be a great loadout sandbox, but that sandbox only matters if they work in combination with the maps. Call of Duty 4 nails its map design. Not every single map is a winner, but in the aggregate, they succeed at providing variety. You're going to have very different experiences on them. A game on Block is going to feel worlds different from a game on Shipment. This variety is crucial for a few reasons. First of all, it's important for the loadout sandbox, as I mentioned. It encourages experimentation and variety with your setups. Let's go back to my example of Block and Shipment. Block is a map with very long sight range and verticality. It's a fantastic map for snipers, LMGs, and more ranged assault rifles. Shotgun and SMG users are at a disadvantage. Shipment is the inverse. It's a chaotic mess of close-range brawls. It's fantastic for shotguns, but not so much for snipers. So, in order to play well, the game is forcing you to do one of two things. First, it's encouraging you to switch weapons and loadouts. However, that is not the only option. You can also just change how you play. On Shipment, you can run around with a shotgun and blast with abandon. But if you take that same shotgun into Block, well, you're better off sticking to the apartment buildings, becoming a corridor menace. Later games have become much more standardized in their size and layouts, with the 3-lane design reigning supreme. ARs and SMGs are almost always the dominant choice. In a nutshell, I guess, in many later iterations you play pretty much the same, regardless of map. It's much more rare for me to see a map load up and then consider whether I need to change my loadout or playstyle. I can't stress how important this variety is for long-term playability. By cycling through all these different experiences, COD 4 remains fresh. Because the maps offer such different experiences, they don't fade into a drone of monotony. However, variety alone is not enough. We've seen the pitfall in variety with later games too. Stonehaven from Ghost still lurks like a specter in COD players' minds. Despite COD 4's variety, there is a remarkable consistency to it. Not every map is a winner, as I said, but there is nonetheless a sense of flow and cohesion to each one. The reason why is another one of COD 4's design principles. In this game, there's an emphasis on power positions. For those unfamiliar, power positions are areas on the map which, if you hold them, give you or your team an advantage. In COD 4, that generally means a height or sightline advantage, usually both. In Backlot, the back construction building is a power position. You have sightlines on most of the map, and it's easy to pick people off. There's even a machine gun nest for you to use. Perhaps the most prominent example is the big building on Crash behind the helicopter. Because of the advantage these positions provide, players intuitively start to fight over them. In essence, they create areas of focus on the map that the rest of the action revolves around. If people are fighting over the building and backlot, you may try to flank around the far side to take out enemies heading to the building, that sort of thing. What this means is that even in a game mode like Team Deathmatch, which is just killing each other, there's another pseudo-objective provided by these positions. It gives the gameplay a direction. It makes your enemies more predictable, and it's easier to gauge the flow of the match. The fights, even in Team Deathmatch, feel infused with a purpose. So even for the big maps, there is a sense of knowing where enemies are headed and what they're up to. This means that even though the maps encourage differentiation of loadouts and gameplay styles, they still create this consistency via a sense of map flow and direction. This combination is the special sauce that makes COD 4's multiplayer work so well. The variety and the consistency keep you coming back again and again. Lastly, I want to talk about visual cohesion and art direction. Your mileage may vary on this topic, but for me, this is something else that really matters. Call of Duty 4's graphics are certainly dated. However, COD 4 nails something far more important than graphical fidelity. COD 4 has a compelling art style. COD 4 nails this very grim atmosphere. The environments are raw, and the game isn't afraid of ruins and rubble and dirt. The colors are muted to solidify this bleak atmosphere, yet at the same time, there's color variety between maps, such as the hazy yellowish sky of Bog. Furthermore, the soldier design manages to find this perfect balance between looking cool while not being overdone. The game draws some of the old school COD vibes of being yet another soldier on the front lines. These elements all come together to a grittiness that feels unified. Everything in COD 4 feels like it belongs in the same world, if that makes sense. While the gameplay is arcadey and not even in the same area code as a milsim type experience, the visual cohesion nonetheless has this immersive quality that pulls you in. And while I think this immersion is an underrated aspect of multiplayer games today, there is a value to being drawn into a game, to feel like you're moving through a particular time or place, imagined or otherwise. Instead of visual cohesion and immersion, the focus has moved to offering visual variety, mainly through cosmetics. I think the ship has long since sailed on cosmetic purchases in games. They're here to stay, and there are some games I enjoy them in, such as Marvel Rivals or Fortnite. However, I think COD 4 is a great example of what is lost with the current cosmetic-focused landscape. One common defense of cosmetics in games is that they don't impact others' experiences. Well, for me, that just isn't true. If you buy a Nicki Minaj skin, well, that means I have to watch you run around in the Nicki Minaj skin the whole game. There's just this resulting lack of visual cohesion or visual identity that can be distracting at times. As I said, your mileage on this point may vary. Some people really care about this stuff and others don't. I guess I just appreciate when a game commits to an art direction. It's why I love games like Destiny, Dark Souls, The Division, or I could go on and on. For me, the cohesive art design of COD 4 is just that last piece of the puzzle that ties the whole experience together. The cohesive art direction just draws me in, and free from the distraction of later games, it just lets me settle into this flow state, where the gameplay, visuals, and sounds blend into a unique and singular experience. So let's bring everything together. What makes COD 4 a timeless masterpiece? The game masters the power of simplicity. The decisions are simple enough to be welcoming to newer returning players, while the power of the decision still creates enough complexity to be engaging years later. Meanwhile, the map design complements this experimentation perfectly with its variety, a variety that still maintains a sense of consistency and flow via a focus on power positioning. And lastly, the cohesive art direction of the game really ties everything together as a cohesive whole. Although I've made a lot of comparisons to the newer games, I'm not trying to hate on them. I actually have a more charitable view on some of the later entries than most other people. However, these games serve as great points of contrast to highlight why the elements in COD 4 work so well. With that, there are still lots of lessons to learn from COD 4. There is a lot of value to be gleaned from how it puts together such a compelling, cohesive experience. Plus, I think it's worthwhile to praise things that are great, just for the sake of appreciation. And well, I think COD 4 is a game that will never stop being great. Thanks for watching, and for putting up with my mid-gameplay. If you liked the video, please consider liking and leaving a comment. I do a lot of retrospective content on shooters and other games, so please consider subbing if you want to see more. Lastly, please check out my new book coming out. Your support really does mean a lot. Thanks again, everyone. I appreciate you making it all the way through. Until next time.